So there you have it. The data is pretty conclusive, according to my setup, and that's been posted. This hydrogen HHO stuff is not working for me. So I think it's really important to frame my results within the framework that I'm using, which is a scientific approach. So what does it mean that my scientific data didn't find a difference between any of these groups, between the hydrogen and the chip and all those combinations thereof? So what does it mean? Well, well, what it means is that right now, unless there are other scientific studies out there, my data is the only data. So it suggests that it doesn't work. But that's not necessarily what science is about. It's not about doing one study and that being the be-all and end-all of truth, right? So if we think about truth and reality, there needs to be more examination of this. So, for example, it would be great to have an expert put together, someone who's been doing that HHO stuff for a long time, put together a rig, a really, with a lot of HHO gas production, in all the right places in the engine, and do a before and after on a dynamo. That would be the best, right? And on a new car, so you could do horsepower calculations. That's ultimately what needs to be done, and that's what a responsible vendor would do. So a responsible vendor comes up with a product, and then they test it, and then they have the data available for the public to see. So, for example, when you, I'm just going to spitball here and say, let's say when you buy a television, okay, when you buy a television, and they say, there's a certain contrast ratio, there's a certain hertz associated or resolution, they test it to make sure that that's the case. So, for example, with contrast and color, they get a colorimeter and light readers out, and they make sure that that the contrast ratio is actually there, and the color representation, and they publish that data. It's part of the specs. You don't really see that with the HHO vendors. They'll dance around the issue and say that you need a chip and that you might not see savings. It's no. That's not a reliable product. A reliable product works, has clear instructions for installation. It's easy to install. That's at least one drawback that I think I can vouch for, is that these are not easy kits to install, and there aren't clear instructions. I didn't really receive good instructions anyway, any which way. So someone needs to run this on a dynamo, and really run better tests. But on the other hand, I did give this experiment a lot of thought. There's a ton of controls. There's a shit ton of controls on this. And I put a lot of time into it. And I even went in sort of with a bias that it was going to work. So for anyone out there who's like, oh yeah, this guy just hates HHO. No, I really wanted this to work. I'm a poor grad student, and I'd love to save 30 to 70% on my gasoline. But I'm a bigger believer in science. And testing something that you buy or that you're interested in. And I guess I kind of, while I was doing this, rather than thinking, oh, I'll be so bummed if it doesn't work out, is, well, I did some science, and now at least I can start to answer the question. And I guess that's where I'm going with this sort of tangent here, is that it's about starting to answer this question: does this technology actually work? And the problem is really that the vendors haven't done their homework and provided us with data. So then it falls to the community. It's our community responsibility to decipher whether or not this is a hoax. And I think this is a first step. This isn't the answer. This isn't the last step. There were a lot of missteps, especially with Mythbusters. They really just didn't do their homework on the technology and did a terrible representation of it. And I completely agree with the HHO community that it's very misrepresentational, and it's bad science, actually, really what it is. So if you look at what I did, it's comparatively better science. You have a control group. There was a treatment, so to speak, in administering the HHO system. A lot was kept the same. I went really in depth to make sure the trials were valid, and used the exact same procedure and all the different the trials and the conditions. I even made sure the weight of my car was the same. I kept a bunch of camping gear in the back because after I ran the first the control trial, I realized I had a bunch of camping gear in the back, so I kept it in the back of my fucking car for almost 6 months now to make sure that the weight was the same. Made sure that I wasn't like that the tank was similar, so it was at least 3/4 full when I was doing it. I'll go over more of the controls in another video, but yeah, I really was detailed about this. But it's still not the best data. There's some limitations, so you could say that maybe the cold was interfering with my later results because the control group was done in the summer and the later group was done in the winter, but that shouldn't matter. HHO should work at all times of the year, and there's definitely people that claim that it does. And I had to put some heat into the cells for the last 3 trials, so that the experimental trials were 3. There was heat in the cells, which supposedly doesn't matter, but hey, that could be the case. So in the end, moral of the story is, if you don't like my results, you have a couple options. 1, you can bitch and complain. 2, you can send me on a million different science errands, and you can say, oh, well, you didn't control this, so you have to go back and redo the trials. Or 3, which is what I'm going to tell you to do, is go do your own experiment, replicate my procedure or create a better one, whatever, and really test this. Come up, use the scientific method as I've used it here, and have a control group, have a way to measure exactly your MPG. These are all really important things that a lot of other investigations into this just don't have. I mean, people do odometer tests, but that's ridiculous, because if you fill up your tank and you drain it, and then next time you fill up you check the odometer or whatever, there's no way to control for how you drove during that time. I mean, people will say like, oh yeah, just do general driving, but there are little subtle things that can really throw off data. And also the way that you drive can change your MPG, so there's like a little bit of human subconscious can get in there. This was a very specific tracks that I drove, and I controlled for the time between them. So I made sure that I was completing the town and highway stretches of track in the same amount of time, so that I wasn't driving slower or faster or whatever. I kept, when I did do the horsepower ones, I tried to keep the throttle controlled, so it wasn't just like, oh, I'm just gonna fucking floor it and see what happens. That wasn't the way I did it. And I'm a science researcher, so I know to look out for all these like little human subconscious errors that get put in your data, because there's some part of your brain that wants to work out or doesn't, so you try and protect against that. Also, this is only one car, right? So this is just a 1998 Subaru Forester. Yes, this needs to be tested on more modern cars, older cars, different makes of cars. I've got a 4-cylinder boxer engine, which is very different from a lot of other types of cars. So you got to keep all these things in mind, because if you don't, then people are going to watch this video and they're going to say, how do I make sense of these results? Is HHO disproven? No, you can't prove or disprove anything with science, nor can you do it in any other way. But we can accumulate a series of data. So my experiment is one little piece of this puzzle, and we need to fill in all the other pieces. That's the way science works. So, so that's, I think, a good way to frame my results. And I really hope that someone else does a study like this that's rigorous and make sure that they have a control group and that they're controlling the way that they drive and the way that they do the study, very scientific, using a dynamo. I would love someone to build a setup and just give it to a testing company to test independently. That would be phenomenal. That's a great way to eliminate bias. And I would love to see some significant results, that there is a difference and it does work, because that would mean great things. And maybe someone will point something out from my videos and say, hey, actually a better way to set this up is XYZ. And I'm able to fix my rig and make it work. That would be phenomenal. But as things lie, it didn't work for me. And there's scientific data, I guess this is the take home, there is scientific data showing that HHO does not work in some situations, right? And that situation is mine. So I've made my situation as applicable to other situations as possible, but that might not always be true. So anyway, that's Techie Pride. And yeah, that's it for this video. That was a huge long rant about science, but I hope that you take away from this that in really sort of understanding the context of these findings. But I know either way people are going to be pissed, and I'm going to get all kinds of hate comments, which I always think are hilarious. I really do. I really find them funny. I've actually already been called a serial murderer for my update video. It's not, the comment's not up there anymore, but it was pretty funny to read. It was something about being a liar and how that also made me a serial murderer, which it was just so absurd it was funny. Anyway, so this is Techie Pride signing off. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have suggestions, please post responses. So if you do your own study, it's a big undertaking, but I hope you do it, and I hope to see some significant results that refute mine. I think that would be phenomenal. Alright, Techie Pride signing off.